minutes from now, and Dr. Christopher Busby in the last 30 minutes of the third hour to go over the incredible information coming out at Fukushima. This thing is now, no doubt, many times worse than Chernobyl. And there's no mitigation even being tried to keep people away from fish, milk, and things like spinach and lettuce that really build up these radioactive isotopes. There's not even testing being done at the federal level, and that's their job. Well, it's the job they've usurped. It really is the state's jobs, and they are trying to do their jobs, but the feds control the purse strings and have been out there trying to suppress universities and others from releasing the data. This is a huge cover-up that's going on, and very, very upsetting. And it's the same with genetic engineering. It's the same with frequency pollution. The conscious decision has been made to basically trash the planet by the very people who are always telling us give up our rights and liberties and our private property and our labor, and that every facet of industry, light bulbs, toilets, homes, cars, has to be regulated by them, and only their buddies can get the contracts. That's what it's about. It's about a planned economy where the insiders are the only ones that are allowed to operate. And then they just try to make us feel guilty and beat us into submission with the common sense overall veneer that our environment's got some problems and we need to take care of it. But then you've got all these top liberal environmentalists, they're not even liberal, call themselves liberal, like Monbiot, the big one world government promoter over in England, the big rock star guy of the so-called left, saying he now firmly believes in nuclear power and that Fukushima's great. And as Dr. Busby has pointed out here on this show, and he's in those top circles in Europe, and knows Monbiot, bottom line, it's more and more Busby has to say, as he said here months ago, this is about population reduction. Nothing fries fertility like radiation. Fluoride's a close second. And you notice they'll spend millions of dollars in lobbying to even get a small town to put it in. And then they write all these books about how they're doing it to us, to the fluoride. I mean, that's what's frustrating is we're not theorizing about most of these issues. Looking at what they're doing and then trying to understand why they're doing it. We're looking at what they're doing, and they tell us in white papers what they're doing. And it's just out in the open. I mean, when I read the Patriot Act and wrote the analysis that won the Project Censored Award in 2003, and they flew me out to California, and I was, at their big awards dinner. It was on free speech television. That was a big deal for us at the time because we probably only reached 500,000 people a day. They had a group of lawyers and others go over my analysis of it, and they said, we can't believe you've written an analysis this good. And then that became the template of a lot of constitutional law scholars and others to just look at the Patriot Act. And all I did was look at where they would point out that, well, to find out what this means, you've got to go to the U.S. Code. We're changing this word and adding that word. And it said in plain English, for any misdemeanor, you can be locked up and the key thrown away and no lawyer, and we can break in your house and we can do whatever we want. And it was all there in the act. And the point is, all these law scholars and people didn't go read the bill. It was only 200 and something pages. I did. I went and read the bill. I spent 3 days writing the analysis of the Patriot Act. The point is, I can't do all of this. And then newspapers wrote articles saying Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist, claims that the Patriot Act is for the American people and not terrorist. And here it is today out of KOAT television, News 7 in Albuquerque. Delayed notice search warrants increasing. Warrants let agents enter homes without owner knowing. A special type of government search warrant that allows authorities, not servants, authorities, see how to search homes without informing the owner for months. Well, yeah, and then there's another section saying you then can't tell anyone they broke in your home. Kind of like when they went to Borders Books and wanted all their list of what folks were reading. And then they told Borders Books, you will not tell anyone or we'll charge you with terrorism. That's a subsection. You can go read it in Alex Jones' analysis of Patriot Act 1. There's my analysis of Patriot Act 2. But continuing here, I imagine someone walking through your neighborhood, coming into your home and rifling through your intimate belongings. They search through your home, your dresser drawers, your computer files, Peter Simonson with the ACLU New Mexico said. These search warrants don't involve knocking on doors or any type of warning at all. Delayed notice search warrants or sneak and peek warrants allow federal agents to enter your home without telling you they've been there until months later. And this article doesn't add then that they tell you under federal law you can't tell folks they were there. The warrants have always been around, but their use has spiked since the revamped Patriot Act in 2005. That's not even right. They've not always been around. They're around since the October passage of the Patriot Act in 2001. And yes, they had Patriot Act 2, expanded it. I mean, these people can't even get this stuff right. The number of delayed notice search warrants spiked nationally from around 700 in fiscal year 2007 to close to 2,000 in 2009. Upwards of 200 approved during the same 3-year stretch came out of the 10th Circuit Court, which covers a handful of states, including New Mexico. The majority of those delayed search warrants weren't even for terrorism-related cases. They got that right. According to U.S. Department of Justice figures, the majority of warrants are for drug cases. But see, now, through policy, they're listing family violence, marijuana as terror. So even a lot of the things they list as terror aren't terror. Continues. The warrants are so secret the New Mexico U.S. Attorney General's office wouldn't go on record with Target 7 about them. The ACLU said it expects delayed notice warrants numbers to keep growing each year as long as certain parts of the Patriot Act remain on the books. Yeah, and this itself is a whitewash, but I'm glad it's in the news. If you simply type in state uses Patriot Act in non-terror related cases, and then put the name of your state in, because it's usually the same boilerplate article, you'll see, we used it 10,000 times in Alabama, whatever 1,000 times in Tennessee, how many times in New York, marijuana, or type in Patriot Act used in marijuana growing case, and you'll see this where they just don't even follow the Bill of Rights and Constitution. And the first Patriot Act totally gutted 6 of the first 10 amendments. And I go from memory for my second analysis that's been seconded by a lot of other major constitutional law scholars. All 10 of them just completely gone. You could say that the 10th is inapplicable because it deals with states, but what do you think the threat fusion centers are and the quiet federalization of police? See, everything is about labeling and scripting. And I'm not going to read part of this article just because it deals with the milk. We've already covered that. I want to read part of this because it deals with how the feds operate. The more I study them. And then once you realize this, you're like, wow, that was always pretty obvious. Well, most great truths are as plain as the nose on your face or my face. But when we come face to face, pun intended, with this naked of corruption, this nakedness of abuse, this conscious, systematic, endemic, system-wide prerequisite of corruption. Corruption just isn't something they tolerate and that's growing. It is the standard of the system. It is the overdriving goal is to institutionalize torture and secret arrest and hands down pants and trampling. But in the case of the Amish and food co-ops and little farmers markets selling food grown locally, why do they come in with guns drawn and slam people on the ground for no reason? You've seen the surveillance tapes on the news. Why do they have a year-long, $500,000 investigation of an Amish guy publicly selling legal milk? Why do they do all this? They do it as part of theater. That's how they fool these juries. Well, the federal juries are kept criminals on average, who just stay on the jury and would do whatever they're told. That's why they have 98% of conviction rates. I mean, again, 98% of folks aren't guilty, ladies and gentlemen. And the old saying, better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man, go to prison. And now DNA is showing what around a third of people on death rows turns out are completely innocent. And witnesses later come out, or they catch somebody with the body buried in their basement a decade later, and it's 100%. And still the states will fight to keep them in jail. I've seen that in Texas. Yeah, you're 100% innocent. We're going to try to keep you on death row. I mean, these are... because they can't ever let you get an inch on them. They've got to keep pushing and bending and twisting everything. And normalizing it. But imagine all the crime going on. 11 years, full dossiers from inside Madoff's organization, people that had worked with him, of how the fraud was working, $100+ billion in fraud, and the SEC would do nothing. In fact, there's evidence that they were warning people on the inside, and then folks that were blowing the whistle were getting persecuted. It was multiple high-powered folks that blew the whistle. 11 years. Of course, the system is there to guard the high-level criminals. But look at this article on Ron Paul that Ron Paul wrote. It's up on Infowars.com. Ron Paul, the Milk Police, and I won't read the whole thing, but on April 20th, after a year-long undercover sting operation, again, he publicly was selling it for years, publicly selling it to private customers, totally legal. People go driving for miles around to get it, and they had a sting. And they do the sting so they can go to the jury and talk about a sting and a SWAT team raid and phrase it so the dumb domesticated jury, but this is a federal jury, so they won't need that, will think it's illegal. And then they'll narrowly interpret some interstate commerce clause to fool the jury. Just like they used counterfeiting clause to convict von Nothouse. They just went in and said, issuing script that is in the likeness and meant to deceive, and then clearly that's not what it was. But see, they don't care. On April 20th, after a year-long undercover sting operation, armed federal agents acting on behalf of the Food and Drug Administration raid the business of Pennsylvania Amish farmer Dan. See, I try to hurry and then I start babbling. I need to take my time. On April 20th, after a year-long undercover sting operation, armed federal agents acting on behalf of the Food and Drug Administration raided the business of Pennsylvania Amish farmer Dan, Allgyer, Algier, to prevent him from selling his unpasteurized milk to willing, fully informed customers in Maryland. Federal agents wasted a whole year and who knows how many of our tax dollars posing as customers in order to catch the Amish farmer committing the, quote, crime, that's in quotes, of selling his milk. He was not tricking people into buying it. He was not forcing people to purchase it. And there had been no complaints about his product. See, no problems, no victim. These were completely voluntary transactions, but one that our nanny state federal government did not approve of, and so they shut down his business. The arrogance of the FDA and so many other federal agencies is simply appalling. These types of police state raids on peaceful businessmen, so reminiscent of our tyrannical federal drug war, have no place in free society. And he goes on. But see, Ron Paul's going from the position that this was wasteful and stupid. It's not stupid at all. This makes complete sense. If you go back into the 50s, Big Agra went in on record, and I've had historical guests on who've written books on the subject, and I've talked to old dairy farmers who witnessed it. Big agribusiness wanted to be able to sell tainted milk, because before, if you gave a cow too much growth hormone or worked on it too much or gave it other drugs, its udders would swell up. It would produce twice as much milk, but it would have blood in it, pus in it. The cows kick a lot of manure into it, and in a real dairy farm, if that happened, you just had to dump out the entire milk and start over. Well, big agribusiness didn't want to do that. And they also wanted to be able to bring in new regulations that would shut down the smaller dairies. And, of course, the old milk wasn't pasteurized and was delivered fresh to your door. And the big grocery stores and others, they didn't want that. They wanted to industrialize it so they could feed you crud. It's the same thing with irradiating the meat now and the spraying the viruses on it to kill the bacteria so they could feed you rotten meat and get away with it. I want to finish up with this when we get back because it shows the industrialization of food production, but also how they put on these events to act like you're doing something criminal when you're not.